everybody. Welcome to the Homestand Show. Albert Vartanian and my co-host James Sharman back in studio. About to go on vacation. You're going to leave me for a week.
I'm going to leave you with Pooni.
Just me and Justin Pooni. It's going to be great. Justin Pooni will be on the show later. Great segue there to talk about the Raptors and the Lakers tonight. Also on the show, Andrew Zuber. We're going to talk about the Jays and the outlook for this upcoming season. Also, Rob Conway from BET99 comes on to talk about the Leafs and the Oilers on Saturday night. Auston Matthews, Connor McDavid. So much to talk about in the show. We need to brand this show like a Wheels Off Friday or something like that. It's been a little...
Wheels off? You mean wheels up?
Is it Wheels Up? Wheels Off?
What does wheels off mean?
I see. I suck with these things. I'm not good
at in the pit crew or something?
Yeah, we're in the pit crew. Pit crew Fridays.
There you go. Pit crew Fridays.
Fred
Makes no
VanVleet,
sense.
you might have saw. He had some comments he made about NBA officials. He went off on them after their loss against the Clippers. He was fined $30,000, which he wasn't too upset about. He's like, I'll take the fine, but here's what I got to say. After being fined, this is what he had to say about the comments after that game.
A lot of support, obviously. I think speaking for a lot of guys, obviously I was frustrated, emotional, but there's a lot of people that feel that way, and hopefully going forward we see some change for the better for the game. You know what I'm saying? It's really just about the betterment of the game, and it was a little emotional, like I said, a tough loss and things not going our way, so got caught up in the moment a little bit, but you live and you learn, you move on. It came out authentic. It came out, in real time. I wouldn't have done that if I felt like I had another option or outlet. I felt like I've exhausted my options, this season, many different occasions, and it was just one of those things. I'm human, and you'll see me make mistakes in real time and make things that is not always perfect, a little unprofessional from my standard. So. It's unfortunate, but it happened. You got to live and learn.
I love his honesty.
Yeah.
And I made a mistake there. That he didn't know he was fined at that point. That was at Raptors practice yesterday before the fine came out. So your thoughts on how he went about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, things are building up, and then he snapped. I think I know the feeling. I'm sure you know the feeling as well.
Yeah,
so I like the authenticity of it all, honestly. And we complain about athletes being so boring and having no personality. And in the NBA, it's a bit different. They do speak their mind. So I don't think we should be too critical when someone does speak his mind. Was it emotional? Yeah. I mean, if he could do it all over again, would he use some of the phrasing? Probably not. You do wonder what it means for the team and for him in particular, in the future games, especially when that referee's refereeing.
Mm-hmm.
Will he be targeted now, even though he's been targeted, apparently?
Yeah.
But yeah, I like it. And he's well-spoken. He's come out. He's kind of owned it. And basically says, yeah, but what I said was true. And he's getting so much backing now from around the league, from within his own team as well. I think good for Fred VanVleet.
And the big question that was really being posed was, did he cross the line? I mean, where
with
is
his comments?
Line? Yeah. Did he cross the line?
Who cares?
Right.
Hope so.
I mean, that's kind of the point of it, right?
Yeah.
The point of it is to cross the line and talk about something that's not really talked about.
Here we are talking about it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's raising that specter of refereeing in the NBA twice in a week now. Don't forget.
Yeah.
So I think it's an important issue now. It's very much a legitimate issue.
Yeah. Ben Taylor and Scott Foster will not be officiating the Raptors game tonight against the Lakers. Okay, the battle between Canada's women's soccer team and the CSA, unfortunately, continues. On Thursday, Christine Sinclair had this to say at Parliament: as the popularity interest grow of the women's game has swept the globe, our most painstaking battle has been with our own federation and trying to obtain fair and equitable treatment in the way we are supported and the way we are paid. She called the culture is not great over there.
No. I mean, listen, it's poisonous. It's toxic right now. And it continued yesterday before the players spoke to the government in the Heritage Committee. The Canada Soccer finally released information that had been promised for a long time, but they did it publicly and basically outlined where the negotiations are at the moment. And the timing of that really upset the players.
Right.
They're saying, we're just about to speak to the government, and now you give us this information. It's really nasty. It seems untenable at this point with the current leadership. They've agreed on gender equity, and that's important. Let's just get that fact straight. Both men and women, that's done. They've agreed to that part. It's about the budget and government's reform at this point. So next date is March 20th. That's when the Canada Soccer officials will then talk to the Heritage Committee. That'll be really interesting.
probably a tough question to answer, but how do you see this ending?
Well, I mean, they'll sign a deal. They have to at some point, right?
Yeah.
I do see more change at the top of Canada soccer. Elections are in May. Nick Bontis, of course, stepped down, was forced out a couple of weeks ago now. But I see there being more candidates coming forward and a new leadership group at some point. When that comes, I'm not sure. But like I said, it's May is the elections. That will be fascinating.
Right. Lots to talk about. I'm sure we'll be talking about it in the coming weeks as well. 3 years ago, you brought this to my attention. Yesterday, Rudy Gobert did this. It was March 11th, 2020, when Gobert tested positive for COVID-19. After doing that, his infection released minutes before the game against Oklahoma City, which led the NBA season to be suspended.
Amazing.
And-
3 years ago, eh?
And that week is when it all came crashing down in terms of sports being canceled, everything being canceled, us not knowing what the hell was going to go on, what's going to happen. It was
Yeah,
crazy time.
it's going to be a rough few weeks, we thought, didn't we? And then
That's
3
what I
years
thought.
later.
I remember my brother called me, and this was like a couple weeks into it. He's like, you know what? We should do this all the time. A break, a reset, where everyone just stays at home and does their thing and goes back so
Yeah.
we can refresh. And I'm like, that's a good idea. And then,
It didn't work out quite that way,
yeah.
did it? So, yeah, I mean, I remember he was being vilified as if he actually released the virus himself.
I mean,
in that
looking back at
lab
it,
in Wuhan, right?
you're like, why would you do that?
I know, but who knew at the time, right? I
who
mean, he was
knew?
pretty ignorant at the same time. But
3 years
yeah,
ago, Sean.
still one of the most, probably the most surreal week I've ever experienced in sports.
Yeah.
You know, no one ever saw sports shutting down because sports brings in money. They shut down leagues. That's massive, and
Yeah.
not just for one league, but for every league in the world. Just incredible.
Yeah, it was incredible.
I miss empty stadiums, though, don't you?
No, I do not. It will not be an empty stadium tomorrow night as Toronto takes on Edmonton. Rob Conway from BET99 will join us next to tee that up. Okay, welcome back to the Homestand Show. Albert Vartanian and James Sharman now joining us. Rob Conway of BET99. How you doing, my friend?
Doing very, very well. Thanks for having me here.
Back from vacation. Where were you, Miami?
I was on a cruise that went to Key West, the Bahamas, and back to Miami, and then a few nights in Miami, yeah.
Oh, so over under on libations.
Over. It doesn't matter what number it is. It was,
It's over?
it was over,
You got
yeah.
your money's worth then, did you?
Yes, well, that's the thing. It was all you can drink on the cruise, so you just feel obliged. They just gave you a $100 tab right out of the
I don't
gate.
know how people do cruises, man. I could never do that.
Really?
On the water, there's not a chance.
What,
that's
do you get
happening.
seasick or you just
I think
scared
I
of
would
going
get
down
seasick.
or what?
I just need to get off there.
The
There's no
food
way.
is so good.
I always hear the food is great, amenities, everything is always awesome.
Yeah.
What's
Yeah,
that, Sean?
but you can't get like UFC cards, can you? You can't watch them live.
You cannot watch the UFC cards. I managed to have a friend help me out with that in the casino bar with the wonderful technology from FaceTime.
Aha.
That's
It was
pretty
a bit shaky, was it?
It was a little bit, yeah. When they knocks him out and it's like, yeah! You can't even see what's
You're a
going
great
on.
man for going on a cruise. I don't think I'd ever do that. But hey, you did and you're here.
It's not really like, in the salt mines or anything. It was a cruise in the Bahamas.
That's how I look at it.
Yeah, I would say.
Looking out the window and seeing the water, it's just not happening.
Well, no one's inviting you on a cruise right now, are they?
That's
So
right.
You would never
you
invite
don't
me
need to
on a
worry
cruise,
about it. I wouldn't know.
Charms is going on vacation next week, by the way.
I
so
am, yeah.
That's why he's in such a good
You'll be
mood
rid
today.
of me for a week.
I know. It'll be me and Justin Pooni next week. Okay, the Toronto Maple Leafs are back in town tomorrow against the Oilers. 5-game road trip, which
Yes.
felt like a 3-month road trip, has come to an end. 3-2, surprisingly, above 500 on that road trip.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think based on the way they played some of those games. They lost to the Oilers on this trip. The last 10 games have been pretty good as well. 7-3-0. Pieces are starting to fit in slowly but surely. And I thought the game against the Devils was probably one of the most important games of the season based on who was missing from that team and Ryan O'Reilly and John Tavares. And they came together to figure out Samsonov, good performance.
Yeah.
Heading now down the stretch, 18 games left. What are you expecting from this team?
Well, what I'm expecting is much of the same, which is to continue to try and figure out exactly where all these pieces lie. And when you make all the moves that Kyle Dubas decided to make,
Yeah.
it becomes important for Sheldon Keefe to figure that out. Now, unfortunately, pieces like Tavares and O'Reilly are out, so that hurts you a little bit. And it hurts you not because you care about the wins and the losses. They're locked in where they are. Whether or not they open up in Toronto or Tampa Bay, we'll figure that out down the stretch. But most importantly, it's understanding game one of the playoffs against Tampa Bay. What is your ideal lineup and what are your ideal lines? And when your players aren't there, it's tough to do that. So I think you're going to continue to see some tinkering and trying to figure out which goaltender you like as well. But, I mean, for the most part, what I'd like to see from Toronto is just the consistency of getting better and more comfortable with each other. We saw it with the Rangers, adding guys like Tarasenko and Kane. It takes a little bit of time. It's understandable.
If they decide that for Tampa, the best solution is putting Tavares on the wing,
Mm-hmm.
O'Reilly at center. If that's the case, now O'Reilly's out for the next number of games,
Right.
10, 11, 12 games, whatever. Don't you want to get Tavares some more reps on the wing still? Because naturally he's going to be back at center.
Yeah, well, I mean, he hasn't played wing since he was probably 10 years old.
Right.
If they even at
Played
10.
it in Europe, I saw somewhere for like a season.
For like a season. Yeah. So, I mean, he's been the center for his whole life. But I think what it comes down to for him, yeah, you want to get him those reps. It's just, it would be if it was the other way around and he had to go back to center, you definitely want that because there's a lot more responsibility, a lot more liability in that position. I think you say to him, look, you're going to play with O'Reilly. You're still going to get some face-offs opportunities. You don't have to come back and cover against their best player or their best team, best line. And you're going to play with Mitch Marner. I'd play on the wing all day. And so I think if, would you like to get him a few more reps altogether? Yes, but he'll be fine. He's an elite hockey player, and it is a little bit less responsibility, so I think he'll be able to handle it.
Good news for Leafs fans. John Tavares was at practice today on a line with Wayne Simmons, apparently. But who knows about
For practice,
Who knows about these practice lines?
Yes.
Let's play some fill in the blank here.
Sure.
Sheldon Keefe has to figure out blank before the playoffs.
He has to figure out his ideal lineup in the sense of who's going to play where. The top six is a question mark in a good way because you have players that can play different positions. You have Marner that can go up on the top line with Matthews or back down with Tavares and O'Reilly. But what is that lineup that you want to be able to see best? Is it Auston Matthews and Mitch Marner? I don't know, because then you might say, okay, well, they're going to shut down that top line. Do we want to lengthen the lineup? Do we want to keep Marner with Tavares and O'Reilly? Obviously, right out of the gate, that line had a lot of, success early on, but now with players out, it's going to be hard to really know. I think that's what Sheldon Keefe wants to be, is confident in his, look, the second it happens, it seems like the lineup's going to blender anyway, but you want the team confident heading into game one. This is our lineup, and this is the way it's going to look.
You know what a good thing is, Sharms, is that with the depth they have now down the middle and all three lines, the Matthews lines won't be up against top lines.
Yeah.
If they choose not to, yeah.
If they choose not to,
Precisely,
right?
Yeah. No, you're right. And seeing Lafferty, hiring the lineup the last game looked pretty decent actually. Great pace, great wheels, right? So offers something. When you're betting playoffs like futures, I mean, it's difficult in hockey because there's so many intangibles for a long playoff series.
For sure.
Do you have a way to approach that?
If you're dealing with betting futures to the Stanley Cup champion, like to who's going to lift the cup, I'd almost look at the Western Conference because you can probably lay it on Colorado. There's a reason they're second favorite. Are they the second best team in the NHL? They certainly haven't looked like it, but they don't have the road that these teams have heading into it, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's
true.
the same thing you could look at in basketball if you're going to be from the East or if you're from the West. It looks like the West is a bigger powerhouse in the NBA. Well, it's the same in the NHL with the Eastern Conference. So could the Boston Bruins lose in the first round? Probably not. But in the second round, sure, they're going to play Toronto or Tampa Bay. That's definitely a tough 7-game series. Then they're going to play Carolina. Well, I mean, who knows? But it could be Carolina or New York. None of these are easy. And meanwhile, you're like, Colorado, okay, who are they going to end up with? They're going to be like Minnesota, or they're going to be, whatever it might be. So I think that's the hardest part, is to see the road and the path to get there.
Which means for sure they're out in the first round, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Nothing ever works out
It
the way we
doesn't.
think it's going to work
No.
out. And that can benefit a team like the Leafs if they can finally get past the Tampa Bay Lightning. I'm not convinced they necessarily need to win a Game 7. I think they can do it in less. And I think
Yes.
that'll benefit the Leafs even more. Okay, next fill in the blank. Blank should start Game 1 versus Tampa Bay.
Samsonov.
Without question?
Without question. His numbers are better. He's been more consistent in the sense of just being available. His best ability is availability, and he's been there. Also, if they have home ice advantage, his splits are ridiculous.
Yeah.
So give him that first start. He's like 17-2 or something like that at home. You got to go with him. Murray, right now, you're just trying to figure out if he's going to be that reliable backup, but you got to go with Samsonov.
Yeah, but you say that, but what if Murray stays healthy down
With
the
the two
stretch?
Stanley Cups there.
I tell you, I'm seduced by the two Stanley Cups and that experience in the playoffs, right? Samsonov,
Absolutely.
He's earned the spot. I'm with you 100%. He's earned it. He's been the better goaltender this season and certainly the more resilient goaltender this season. But I just have a suspicion that when push comes to shove for Game 1, if healthy, Sheldon Keefe will look at that Pittsburgh Penguins team of 10 years ago now.
Well, that's the thing, and it is that long ago. And so I think what they're trying to figure out now is how long is that leash for Samsonov? Is it 3 goals in the first period and boom, you're out, or is it we'll give you the first 2 games at home or away, wherever it is, and then we'll move to Murray if we have to. And if Murray's what you guys are talking about, and he's playing well all the way down the stretch, that lease will shorten up for Samsonov.
I'm with you with Samsonov, but it's just, keeps thinking about Matt Murray in the back of his mind. He looked pretty good in his last outing, and I'm not sure if he's going to start Saturday. We're going to wait and find out.
First cup, he came off the bench.
Yeah. You never know. You just don't know Matt Murray. He can go in warm-ups and then blow a quad or something.
Maybe it's Joseph Wall's time to shine. Hey?
You never know. Quickly, one last fill in the blank.
Sure.
No, this one's not even a fill in the blank. This is a would you rather.
Okay.
Ooh.
Would you rather Leafs forwards, so that's 4 forwards, Auston Matthews, Mitch Marner, John Tavares, William Nylander, or Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, the Nuge, and Zach Hyman? Who would you take right now as your 4 forwards?
It's really tough because of how good Connor McDavid is.
Yeah.
But if after Connor McDavid, even Leon Draisaitl, I don't think he's as good as Auston Matthews or Mitch Marner, and he has the benefit of who he plays with.
I feel bad for Draisaitl.
I mean, look, he doesn't
no
get
love.
He gets no love whatsoever. If he was on another team, though, is he a 50-goal scorer? Who knows? But I would probably go with Toronto, but it's a close one. But depth-wise, I didn't realize we were just going with the top 4. I'd probably go with the bottom 6 of Edmonton more than the bottom 6 of Toronto.
Yeah, I could see that
so if you
too.
stretch it out to the all 4 lines, I'd probably go with Edmonton. But in the top 6, I'm going with the Leafs.
You say that now, but I mean, Leafs fans and even myself, I'm in love with Noel Acciari. I mean, what kind of Leaf fan doesn't love a guy who just hits and wins faceoffs? Like the stuff that no one else
for a guy
talks
that's
about.
not so big, I know he's heavy,
Yeah.
but he's not tall. He's not a big man by
but
any
he
stretch.
hits
But he hits
everything,
everything in
which I love.
sight. Doesn't care.
That's what you gotta do.
By the way, McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman, and the Nuge have 31 more points this season than the other 4.
Well, there you go.
I think that you got to
But
chalk.
how much of that is actually McDavid?
And you also got to, exactly. It's 124 points. You got to
Yeah.
chalk that up to Auston Matthews not having the best of seasons either, right?
Yeah, you come off a 60-goal season. It's unlikely you're going to repeat that. Maybe a bit of an injury, but no, McDavid is the difference maker here. If I'm starting a team, I'm starting it with McDavid.
Oh, it's
100%.
McDavid all
Not
the
even
way. I
close.
was saying it before we got on the air. The only guy I'd pay to watch C is Connor McDavid. We'll have
The
a
only guy in the
discussion-
league, eh?
Yes, we'll have a discussion the next time we have Rob Conway on. Thanks for coming
And
on.
Acciari, of
problem.
course.
And Acciari. Rob Conway, BET99. All right, welcome back to the Homestand Show. Thanks to Rob Conway for hopping on from BET99. James Sharman, Albert Vartanian with you. Now we're joined by our very famous MLB outsider. He's not an insider. He's an outsider. It's Andrew Zubes. How you doing, Zuber?
I'm as much a outsider as I am famous, I think. So it feels very good. Nobody gives me a better intro than you guys. Holy.
Dude, you're the best, and we appreciate you coming on the show. So the Blue Jays have been ranked as the 5th least annoying MLB fans in Major League Baseball. Considering you follow this team closely, I go to the games at the Rogers Center. I think they should probably be lower down that list. But what do you think about that?
I would suggest whoever wrote that to tweet more negative things about the Blue Jays and see how that works out for you. Okay. I'm going to be very careful with my wording here. I'm going to be very careful.
No, we don't want you to be careful.
It's one thing to say that in March, April, May, when there's a lot of other distractions. What I find with the Blue Jays fan base, and I love the Blue Jays fan base. I am not just I'm a member, not just an investor in there. It can get a little dicey when the attention is on them. When there's no other games in town and it's October, they famously broke that 22-year streak of not being in the playoffs by back-to-back playoff years, and both of those years somebody threw a beer onto the field in 2015 and 2016. So fair enough if that's not your attention to annoying. I think that's really interesting. 5th least, because boy, there was like this weird obsession last year with likability. I don't know if you guys remember that. It was like the fan base was obsessed with everybody thinking that the Blue Jays team was likable because they were young and like had fun. And they ran into Seattle, who was also young, maybe even more fun, maybe even a better story. So really interesting one there. I sort of feel like sometimes in the worst of times, the Blue Jays fan base can be a combination of the worst parts of the Maple Leafs fan base and the worst parts of the Raptors fan base, where it's a little bit like there's that fatalism that comes into play very quickly because there's been such a long run of lack of success. And there's also that like exceptionalism that you sort of sometimes can get with Raptors fans, where it's like all of our guys need to make the All-NBA and be part of the All-Defense voting, and you want all these accolades and attention from the South is sort of a part of what it's maybe an inferiority complex. So very interesting one. I'm not sure where I would have had them ranked.
Well, they break it down as to what makes an annoying fan, right?
Okay.
So here are the most annoying types of fan. I'm curious as to where you guys think these Jays fit in. The always drunk fan. All right, that's one. The always negative fan. The fan who never stops yelling, the bandwagon fan, the know-it-all fan, hate know-it-all fans, by the way, the condescending fan, the fan who never sits down. At the same time,
That's me.
you're at a freaking
That's
sporting event. You should be allowed to stand up and
Mhm.
support your team. You're obsessed with fantasy fan, scumbags. The man who pretends to like, the fan who pretends to like sports but doesn't, and the fan stuck living in the glory years. Now, when I go to Jays games wearing my Junior Felix or my Rance Malnick shirt,
Wow.
I might be accused of being someone living in the glory years, but I'm
You might
fine
be
with
the
that, Zoops.
Might be a touch condescending there with the you guys wouldn't understand an album you never heard of jersey. Very interesting choices there. I feel like I feel like they sometimes they touch on all those things. The Blue Jays fandom is very fluid throughout the course of the year. As I said, though, when you have fans that are fans of hardcore Raptors fans and hardcore Leafs fans that don't come on board until June or April if you're a Leafs fan, and then you have fans that sort of check out when the team is bad halfway. So there is a weird mix. I think if you're talking about like people who are their number one thing is Jays fans, then maybe you are dealing with a little more soft gloved fan base.
The last time you were on here, Zoobs, we talked a lot about pitch clocks and new rules, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But we really did get into the Toronto Blue Jays and the outlook for the upcoming season. Now, obviously, one of the favorites in the AL East, probably not expected to win the AL East with the Yankees there. But your overall outlook and expectations for the Jays heading into this season.
I err on the side of optimism in general. I'm the kind of fan that talks themselves into just about whatever happens whenever it happens. But that being said, there is, if like whichever way you want to handle this, if you want to be an optimist or a pessimist, there's pretty easy ways to go down those roads. If you're an optimist, you would look at this and say the rotation has not been deeper in quite some time. They added Chris Bassett and subtracted Ross Stripling. That's probably a net positive. And you have plenty of contenders in your Kikuchi, your White, even your Nate Pearson, and being in that fifth role. But the top of the rotation is as good as it's ever been, especially if you're believing that Jose Barrios is probably due for a bounce back, which he probably is. And you would also say you're moving into your prime years for Vladdy and Bo, and you're moving into those guys not just being comfortable, but being veterans who are real threats day in and day out. And then if you want, you can also say the bullpen's never been deeper. Behind Romano, there's now 4 guys in Swanson and Bass, and Chad Green is involved in there. There's 3 or 4 guys behind Romano now that you would go to. Jimmy Garcia is the guy I was thinking of that you could basically go to in any situation and be pretty happy with as an 8th inning guy. So that has depth. And you would say, the weaknesses that held them back last year were unforced errors, defensive issues, bad base running, over aggressiveness at the plate, and they have solved those. They went out and got very good defensive players. They went out and got very good base runners. They went out and got some balance, so they have some lefties in the lineup. They have sort of covered up all the weaknesses and shaved down the strengths a little bit. Like losing Teoscar obviously hurts, but they weren't hurting for power hitting right-handed hitters anyway. They weren't hurting for aggressive hitters anyway, and they supplemented him with Dalton Varsho, who is a very good hitter in a different way, but also still hits for power, and again is a superfluously good outfielder. The issue, if you were to be a pessimist, is you would say, okay, the outfield is changed and improved, but how many games are you getting out of George Springer? How many games are you getting out of Kevin Kiermaier? These are not guys that have played triple-digit games consistently in the last 3-4 years, so you can draw a path pretty quickly in your mind to you have some really unproven guys in this lineup in the outfield. It could be Otto Lopez. It could be Nathan Lukes. It could be Addison Barger. There's a number of guys that could be in this outfield, and it's not a huge stretch of the imagination to see how they get there. The same with the pitching. Pitching depth is great until 2 guys get hurt, and now Kikuchi is your number 3. It's baseball will find your flaws and will expose them. It's a matter of whose flaws are the least damaging and whose flaws get brought up the least. So I lean optimistic. I think they're a better team than they were last year. I think the word team is the operative one. I think they've put together a team versus put together a collection of talent. Does that always matter in baseball? Hard to say, but the weaknesses aren't as glaring aside from, outfield depth, and every team, if they get their best players hurt.
And hey, Kikuchi's looking pretty good so far in spring training. Where does Ricky Tiedemann fit into this situation? He's a lefty who can touch 99, pretty rare beast actually. Is he someone that might get innings this season, or is he down the line a little bit?
Good problems to have. Is you have where do we fit in our 99-mile-an-hour lefty who's in his early 20s. He has told everybody that will listen that he is on the Alek Manoah path, that pitching in the minor leagues at all is not interesting to him. And you mentioned touching 99. I am sort of a believer is like you only throw 99 so many times in your career. It's one of those things like if you're going to have those bullets, I would rather them be used in the major leagues. You don't have to look much further than Nate Pearson, I think, threw 104 in Arizona Fall League a couple of years ago. And I was just like, don't throw 104 in the Fall League, please. Throw 104 in the major leagues. The story of a contending team calls up a top prospect to push them over the edge is one that has been a modern strategy in the last 5-10 years. That's what the Rays do. That's what the Dodgers do. That's what good teams do to supplement their skills and supplement their organizational depth. They tried it a little bit last year with Gabby Moreno. I think they're going to give him the opportunity to blow the doors down. They're going to give him the chance to be too good to be held down, to be undeniable. Always helpful to bring up a lefty who throws 100. I wouldn't be surprised if he sneaks his way in. If he's good in the minor leagues, there's no real reason. The competitive window is open. It's now. They have Matt Chapman for this year. Next, they have George Springer in his 30s. The key guys in this group, beyond Vladdy and Bo, are in their back half of their prime. So it's a different way. We talked, before Vladdy and Bo in 2019, it was about service time and you want to maximize the time they're here. When the window is open, it's about how good can the team be right now. I think Al Kirk is a good example of that. Is Al Kirk a catcher long-term? We don't know. Is Al Kirk this valuable long-term? We don't know. Right now, he's good, so let's get him in there right now. I think Tiedemann is a similar thing. If he can be good enough to throw strikes and get outs at major league level right now, 2023 is the season that matters. So I don't think they'll be as patient as they have been in the past with some of their prospects.
Zoobs, just quickly on Bo Bichette. I mean, he had an incredible September and October to end the last season in the MLB, first in almost every category when it comes to batting, average, hits, RBIs, total bases. I mean, defensively, there's issues there, but do you think he can springboard from that performance to the end of the season and bring that into this year?
Yeah, it's one of those funny things that it's basically the same story 2021 as well. Like he was really, really hot in the back half of the year. I think sometimes you just had to accept that that's who he is. He's a guy that when it's going right, it clicks better than very few. There's very few guys in the league that are better than him when everything is clicking. There are warts. Baseball is 6 months every day. If he was that good all day, every day, he'd be the best player we've ever seen. You sort of have to understand the reality of like that'll come and go, and being that locked in is not realistic. But I think it's a decent, the overall picture of the season does paint a guy that is an extremely valuable shortstop. They locked him up. They said, we're not doing arbitration for the next 3 years with this guy. There's no point in pissing him off and going through that. Let's just assure him that for the next 3 years, we want him here. So yeah, I think he's a guy that, there's no more needing to prove himself. He's sort of proven himself as an all-star caliber shortstop, a guy who can rack up 4+ win seasons even when he's not playing that well. As much as it may be frustrating time to time, not a lot of teams have that under 25 years old. So sometimes you have to look at what you do have versus what you don't.
Yeah, a lot to look forward to with the Toronto Blue Jays. Zoobs, we can talk to you all day. We're definitely going to do this again. We're running out of time, but thanks so much for coming on. Let's do this soon.
Sorry again for being so verbose, guys. I know you have 25 questions you want to ask me. I can't help it.
No, we're going to hit him once again once you come back on again. Thank you so much, Zoobs. All right, coming up, Justin Pooni joins us. We're going to wrap up the Raptors' 5-game road trip comes to an end tonight against the Los Angeles Lakers. Welcome back to the Homestand Show. James Sharman, Albert Vartanian. Big shout out and thanks to the Zoobs for hopping on and talk Blue Jays. We could talk Jays with that guy forever.
Literally forever.
Yes.
I think actually.
Joining us now is Justin Pooni of Hoop Talks and my fill-in co-host when James Sharman isn't here, and you won't be here next week. And the fill-in will be Justin Pooni, but we have a problem. Justin has a bit of a beef with you, Sharman.
No.
Justin, let him know what's going on.
James, you're my favorite Brit in the studio, but I got a beef with you. TFC, the best sporting event in Toronto?
Yeah.
Come on.
Okay, Sharman, can you add some context here?
Well, first of all, I want context from Pooni. Like, what should be the best sporting event in Toronto?
So people are going to think I'm soft, right? It's because I don't like outdoor sporting events. I want to be in a climate-controlled arena. I don't want to be outside. Look, Next week, tomorrow it's going to probably be cold, maybe snowing at the TFC game. No, thank you. I will gladly watch the TFC game from the comfort of my own home.
Wow,
I do
you know
not wanna
what,
be
Justin?
outside.
I tell you what. I mean, young people today get a bad rap, right? You know, oh, they're entitled. Oh, they're soft. Well, I work with young people here every day, including yourself, Justin. You're not entitled, but obviously you're soft. That's ridiculous. And July evening watching TFC, yeah, it's tough, isn't it? Oh, yeah, just at 25 degrees. That's hard. Listen,
No, it's not. You're afraid of the humidity, James.
is that the
reason?
reason?
You're sweating out there.
Humidity. You're sitting down drinking beer. Who cares about humidity? Is that the only reason? The climate? That's the reason you don't like TFC?
You know what? I went to the first game Lorenzo and Sydney played in Toronto. Awesome experience, but I was sweating like no tomorrow.
So
I felt
it is.
so
It's the weather.
uncomfortable.
What are you gonna
It's the
do?
weather.
It's like, well, what about a Jays game in July?
And being
Yeah,
stuck
but-
in that, you know, even in the Scotiabank Arena watching Raptors,
Yeah.
right? It gets pretty warm in there as well. It's very, I don't know, the atmosphere is not quite what it should be.
I love
I would
Raptors
rather have a
games.
cool breeze coming off the lake than being stuck in that popcorn, stinking, beer swilling environment.
I will say this. I think in Toronto, Raptors, maybe the best atmosphere.
You think so, eh?
Yes.
See, here's my problem with NBA, right? The game itself is fantastic, but there's so many breaks in play, and there's always something going on in the court. There's like, you know, little fellas doing dances, you know, or kids coming out and doing break dancing, or, you know, horse races. I don't know what it is. Donkey. It's too much. I'm a bit of a purist. I like watching sports with sports, you know, and during that break in play,
Yeah.
I can go to the washroom. I can
Right.
get a
Sorry,
beer.
I
I don't be having to watch.
Oh, here we go.
I had to jump in too. Like I usually wait for you guys to bring me in. I don't want to call you out because it seems. Do you have a problem with little people? Is that what you said, or is it just the kids?
Maybe compared to the players, I should
Oh.
I'm thinking
They,
myself a
they
hole
are
here.
different,
Little
different
fellas,
heights.
Yeah, I just had this. Yeah,
Oh.
I was at Cirque du Soleil last year and I got distracted. I got a bit confused.
I've never
here.
been. Good atmosphere.
It's Cirque du Soleil is the best atmosphere in Toronto
How are the
sports.
breaks in play
Best
there?
night
Oh,
out
it's
of
great.
Toronto.
It's
Cirque du
fantastic.
Soleil.
They're
Give me enough
non-stop. They have
time?
clowns and stuff. Who I don't always appreciate,
Oh,
but
Oh my goodness, we need to get back on track here. Okay, Justin, you're on to talk some Raptors. Freddie VanVleet.
Yes.
How about another little fella who's just fined $30K
just a 6'3".
for some comments he made about referees? We talked about this when you were on the show yesterday. Obviously, the $30K fine coming out last night. Fair, unfair, should have been more.
I thought it was going to be more for what we talked about it yesterday. Fred VanVleet took full advantage of. He knew he was going to get fined, and he just went on a full-on pipe bomb style wrestling promo. I know
What kind of promo,
producer
yeah?
Sean will find some sauce in that, but what he said was the truth. You know, Marcus Smart came out. Players are agreeing with him. And people in the States are agreeing with him, which is crazy for Raptors fans to actually believe that people in the United States actually have the Raptors back in this situation. But I guess at $30K, it is what I thought it would be like $50K maybe, because, you know, he not only, you know, he was very animated about it, and then he circled back with all reps, but it is what it is. Fred can fit the bill. He'll be fine. He's going to cash out big in the summer anyway. So $30K is probably like $30 for you and I.
Yeah, no kidding. It's just the $30K. Brush that off. So, are NBA refs the worst refs in professional sport, or is it just that
Oh.
NBA players are the most
Ooh.
ballsy and don't care and speak their minds and actually have a little bit of charisma compared to a lot of other sports?
They definitely got more charisma than hockey players, that's for sure.
Yeah.
No kidding.
But look, I think the NBA, the biggest problem is that we know their refs and their hidden agendas, and the fact that we have stats like with Ben Taylor and Fred VanVleet, with the amount of technical fouls he's called against Fred VanVleet this year, that's a problem. The fact that we know that Scott Foster and Chris Paul, whenever he officiates Chris Paul in the playoffs, Chris Paul's 0-12 in his last playoff games that are officiated by Scott Foster. That's a problem. I think the fact that is a known and well-known fact and stat per se in the NBA is crazy. And it's something that I believe Adam Silver needs to address. The way I see it is officials are brought in to enforce the rules of the game. They're meant to be kind of hiding in the background. I don't want to know my referees or officials on a first name basis. I don't want to know who they are. Yes, we watch sports, all of us on a high-end basis, and we're going to know these things, but I want them to fall in the background, right? I don't want them to be the main character. And Ben Taylor and Scott Foster in the last two Raptors games have been the main character in each of those events. Now, again, they weren't the reasons the Raptors lost, but the fact that after these games, officiating has been the biggest storyline, The NBA should not want that. And as Fred VanVleet said in that great promo he cut, fans don't come to see refs play. They don't. They see players play. And that's the case in point of what it should be.
That's a great point, but a bit rich in the NBA when fans come to see the players play, unless they're being load managed and they're not playing.
Right.
Just to throw that in there.
To throw that in there.
That's a whole other topic.
Just FYI, Ben Taylor and Scott Foster will not be officiating tonight's game for the Raptors and Lakers. But you have to imagine they're going to be in charge at some point for the Raptors, and
it makes it awkward, doesn't it?
Of course.
I mean, do you think Fred's being
this is going to
strategic
come back
as
to
well?
bite them in the ass?
Do you think it's being strategic as well? Because he
Yeah,
knows at some
how?
point he will be playing in a game where that referee is reffing him, and maybe now he's made the noise. People are thinking about it. Will he get a break now? Do you think?
No,
from that same. You
I
don't think so? The opposite.
I truly believe that the NBA gives the power to the refs, and the refs are going to make the decisions that they want to make. They have that power to do so, and then they just fill out the pool report after the game and move on. You know, how many times are you going to keep taking this $30K fine on the chin until it's not fine anymore?
I love Nick Nurse backing him as well, though.
Of course, yeah.
Saying, you know, well, kind of agree with what he says.
Yeah, and the player Marcus Smart came out and backed him up too.
Yeah.
So he has a lot of that in his corner, but they're not backing up his paycheck and backing up these fines. He's the one who has to pay them, right? So I don't think it's going to continue, but there is going to be an issue, I think, moving forward with Taylor and Foster officiating these games because they're not going to like what he had to say. They're especially not going to like that the rest of the NBA players and coaches and in media that are backing this guy up.
Do referees in the NBA, do they chirp players? Because I know in soccer, there's certain referees, the banter between the players and refs is actually kind of legendary. And some players really appreciate it. I think it's less now, but certainly in the past, there was a good relationship between players and refs. Is there much conversation, do you think, Justin, in the modern NBA?
There's a video circulating right now on Twitter of apparently Ben Taylor trying to elbow Fred VanVleet during the game. I don't know if you guys saw that.
No.
I just saw that literally right before I came on. There's a video of Ben Taylor slightly elbowing or trying to nudge Fred VanVleet. And look, that to me is crazy. If that's the case, again, I think people are trying to, grasp something that's not really there. But I saw it and it was kind of obvious, right? I don't know if I think especially in the NBA, the perception between the players and officials has been so bad. I mean, we totally haven't mentioned LeBron. Remember, he blew up in Boston a couple months ago at the end of the game when he got fouled by Jason Tatum and put on that big display of theatrics after that game. I think the players and the refs are in a very, tense relationship. And that's in all sports, right? Players are going to be hot. Of course, in baseball, we've seen it a bunch of times. In hockey, football, soccer, it happens. But I think there needs to be a sense of trust from both parties that, hey, we can trust that the officials are going to call the game straight and narrow, and the player and the refs can expect the players to have that respect. But right now, it's in a very tense relationship. And as Albert mentioned, this could come back and really haunt the Raptors because refs there's a small brotherhood of them, and they're going to stick together and back up their people. And I think it could bite the Raptors in the ass, especially in a situation where these games mean a lot. And if one ref feels like, the Raptors have been sullying the referees out there, we're not going to give them the calls. We're going to let things slide against them because they did one of our brothers wrong.
Yeah, and who knows what the fallout's going to be, but I would think the Raptors have a target on their back. I just watched that clip on Twitter, by the way. It's a bit of an elbow, a bit of a nudge. You got to check it out. We don't have the clip
but I mean,
right
I'm
now.
sure that happens in most games. But because
Probably.
there's history now, you're going to search it out. But let's jump to conclusion, shall we?
Yeah.
Yeah, he physically assaulted Fred VanVleet in the game, and I'm outraged by it.
Oh, you need your gavel here.
I need my gavel.
You
Yeah,
need your gavel.
Was it gavel?
No, it's gavel.
It's gavel.
Okay, so the Raptors taking on the Lakers tonight, Justin, in an important game. We'll keep saying this. It's overused must-win games, but they are must-win games when you're the Toronto Raptors and you're trying to get into the playoffs. You're only a half game up on the Washington Wizards at the moment. So they got the Lakers, Nuggets, Thunders, Timberwolves, Bucks, and Pacers. But for tonight, Anthony Davis playing much better in the absence of LeBron James. And I just think as good as Pirtle has been, as good as OG has been, I don't think the Raptors have an answer for Anthony Davis tonight.
No. The way Anthony Davis, look, I am one to not defend Anthony Davis. I once have said that he was the biggest waste of talent in the NBA.
Wow.
But he's playing unbelievable basketball right now in absence of LeBron James. And what really stuck out to me was when he got hit in the face and his nose was all busted up. And a lot of people would have thought Anthony Davis would not come back to the game after that. But he came back and he played great. Another thing, Albert, is when you watch Anthony Davis play, sometimes he falls in love with the jump shot and becomes a perimeter player. but he's been going to the hoop a lot lately and going into the paint, going to those tough areas. And I want to see that from Anthony Davis. When Anthony Davis is on his game and he's playing and he's fully healthy, he's a top 5 talent in the world, not only offensively, but defensively as well. And just like we said with Nikola Jokic, of course, OG Anunoby kind of stopped Nikola Jokic, but he still almost got a triple-double. It's the same thing with Anthony Davis.
Yeah.
Whoever you have on Anthony Davis, he's still going to get his 20 and 10 and whatever, right? But it's how hard you make him work for that. I think OG will get the assignment and Jakob Poeltl will see a bit of double teams, yes. But also, the Lakers are much more improved shooting from beyond the arc. Jared Vanderbilt, Malik Beasley.
Yeah, sorry, Justin, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but D'Angelo Russell
Yeah.
expected to play tonight. Darvin Ham saying he's pretty much a full go. He's missed the last 6 games with a sprained ankle.
Yeah.
What does his presence bring to that Lakers offense?
Pick me up right there. He can run the offense. He can shoot the ball. He can handle it. I'm interested to see how he's going to be coming back from an ankle injury. Will he get a bunch of minutes? But he's definitely going to be a threat because he has the skills to wreck a game. He hasn't done it consistently in his career, but that's a guy the Raptors are going to have to watch out for because he can drive it, kick it out, and also create his own shot as well.
Quickly, this is more of like a broader question, but if you can answer this as quickly as possible, what are the off-season priorities for the Toronto Raptors? I know there's still a lot of game left, but when you have Fred's contract and Gary Trent and Pascal and Poeltl coming up, what's the number one priority for Masai?
Figure out who you want to build around. Figure out who your core guys are and build around them. If that includes Fred VanVleet and Gary Trent Jr., keep them. But you have to decide who you want to stick around for the long haul for this team to be around when they want to start to contend. If they're not a part of the plans, get rid of them and have a plan going forward on what you want to do. And I think right now the Raptors are stuck in the middle. That's a place you don't want to be. And I think that this offseason is their time to decide this is our core we're going to be moving forward with. The rest of you, onto different things because these are the people we want to stick with and build forward because we want to compete for championships.
Yeah, and this deserves a bigger conversation talking about, Masai was becoming a buyer at the deadline, the right move to make, and we'll only know come the end of the season, right? We don't expect them to make a long run in the playoffs, so they do get in there, but there's going to be a lot of question marks coming up in the summer.
And should they be a luxury tax team?
That's true.
Most fans will say, yeah, damn right. You see that place, it's jam-packed
I just
every
want to
day.
know what's next. What's next after the playoffs, after you get bumped by one of these teams, because it's probably going to happen. But anyway, they're playing the Lakers tonight, and which should be a pretty fantastic game. 10:30 p.m., I believe, is tip-off. Justin Pooni, thank you so much for doing this, and I'll see you next week on the show.
See you next week.
Soft,
All right, buddy.
soft,
All right,
soft,
coming
soft.
up, me and James Sharman will wrap up the show. All right, welcome back to the Homestand Show, and we've reached the end of the show. It's usually my favorite block of the show because producer Sean gets to jump in, James Sharman, and we get to talk to him. He gives us his worst bet of the night. He's 1-1 so far. He had the Colorado Avalanche yesterday.
Yeah.
They lost.
They
The
did.
Los Angeles Kings.
Yep.
But, like I said, 1-1. Sean, what do you got for us tonight?
Well, to be honest with you, I don't really like anything tonight. I mean, NHL's only a couple of games on the ice, and they're heavy favorites, so even taking the puck line doesn't really make sense to me.
Okay.
So I'm looking towards the UFC, actually, this week. So let me just go full screen. So all the attention's on me. Let's go with a little Saeed Nurmagomedov, not related to Habib Nurmagomedov. He's minus 260, so I'm going to parlay him with Nikita Krylov, who was supposed to be on a card a couple weeks ago, and it got canceled. And parlay that with, let me just look at my notes, Ricardo Ramos. So that'll get you to around plus 160. So again, your 3 outcomes for plus 160 is not fantastic, but that's how you could do it in a little MMA betting. So those are my 3 bets on the weekend.
I like that. I'm seeing that here at around plus 180.
Are you gonna actually follow Sean's advice
I think
here?
so, yeah.
After all you said this week about Sean.
You never know. I mean, he's 50% right now. It's pretty good, right? It's pretty good.
Yeah.
So he's got the UFC parlay. So big news. James Sharman, as I mentioned at the top of the show, will not be with us next week. He's going on vacation, a well-deserved vacation. We were talking about Sean, who was just on vacation, likes chocolate mudslides.
Undeserved vacation.
Yeah, we questioned the chocolate mudslide thing. But please, share any vacation tips with Sharman here. He needs it.
Sharms, firstly, you're going to like a resort, correct?
Yeah, it is. It's one of them.
So for resort vacation, I would recommend, and I'm sure you're with your mass wealth, you're fine with tipping well when you first arrive, and also tip well in general. But I feel like when you tip well in those sorts of spaces, it's great for them because they make so little, and B, you get better service.
Yeah,
So,
it's a great point.
Yeah, you got to
You know
throw
what?
the bellhop.
See, I'm not really a resort guy. I always feel guilty in resorts. I don't like being waited on, believe it or not. It's kind of
I
weird that
get
way.
what you're saying. Yeah.
So I will tip them well,
But
especially at
tip
the bar.
is huge. Yeah. Once you walk in there, how's it going? Bellhop.
Boom,
5 beans.
there you
Go to
go.
the bartender, 10 bananas. Because that's the guy you're going to be with all
Yeah,
day,
yeah.
right? You
And I'll
wanna
give them real
free
tips. And
and if it wasn't
Me?
if it
Five?
wasn't
No,
a
that's not
resort
Five
vacation,
not good enough?
No.
What are you going to kill?
joking.
If
Wow, sharp.
if it wasn't a resort vacation, Fort Knox, keeping the money in your front of your underwear.
In
We've
there,
got
yeah.
10 seconds left.
Yeah, even the change?
I mean, just adding up the mudslide and the Fort Knox thing.
Are you
this is
jingling?
horrible.
Yes, I'm jingling. Why? Why do you ask?
Yeah. All right, that's the end of the show. Have a great weekend. We'll be back on Monday.